What Nietzsche got wrong. Let's talk about Friedrich Nietzsche, one of the most influential philosophers in modern history. His ideas about individualism, morality, and the will to power are considered radical, even revolutionary. His work has inspired countless thinkers, artists, and movements. But here's the thing. While Nietzsche had some incredibly profound insights, he also got some things wrong. Now let's be clear from the start. Nietzsche was a brilliant mind, and we cannot dismiss his ideas outright. But there are aspects of his philosophy that have not aged well, and in some ways they stand at odds with a more compassionate, evolved understanding of humanity. So what exactly did Nietzsche get wrong? First off, let's talk about his notion of the Übermensch, or the overman. Nietzsche proposed that human beings should transcend traditional morality and embrace a higher form of existence, a kind of superhuman who creates their own values and lives beyond the constraints of societal norms. This is a compelling idea, no doubt. It sounds freeing, even empowering. The problem is, Nietzsche's idea of the Übermensch was essentially a glorification of individualism at the cost of social connection, empathy, and collective well-being. Nietzsche's will to power, the idea that individuals should strive to assert their power and dominance over others, can be seen as an endorsement of ruthless self-interest and competition. On the surface, this might seem like a call for personal empowerment, but when you look closer, it's a philosophy that overlooks the importance of cooperation, compassion, and the fundamental interconnectedness of humanity. Nietzsche's world was one in which individuals were supposed to rise above everyone else, without any regard for the consequences of their actions on those around them. This brings me to another problem with Nietzsche's ideas, his dismissal of traditional morality, especially Christian morality. Nietzsche famously declared that God is dead, meaning that the traditional moral structures rooted in religion no longer held relevance in the modern world. He rejected the notion of absolute good and evil and urged people to create their own values. But in doing so, he overlooked a crucial fact. Moral systems, even religious ones, have served an essential function in societies for millennia. They offer people a sense of structure, stability, and a framework for ethical behavior. Nietzsche's call to create your own values may sound liberating, but it's also profoundly isolating. Not everyone has the resources, the courage, or the freedom to create their own moral code. Without some kind of shared moral understanding, society risks descending into chaos, where the strong dominate the weak. Nietzsche also made a crucial error in his approach to suffering. He argued that suffering was an inevitable part of life, and that we should embrace it as a means of personal growth and self-overcoming. "What does not kill me makes me stronger," he said. It's a catchy phrase, and one that sounds empowering at first glance. But this perspective can be dangerously reductionist. Suffering, especially unnecessary suffering, can break people. It can destroy lives, it can create trauma, and it can leave scars that last for generations. Nietzsche's emphasis on suffering as a means to greatness risks romanticizing pain and ignoring the very real harm it does. Not everyone becomes stronger through suffering. Some are crushed by it. A more compassionate worldview would ask, how can we alleviate suffering rather than glorify it? Perhaps one of the most troubling aspects of Nietzsche's philosophy is his elitism. His disdain for the masses, his belief that the noble few were destined to lead the way, is a dangerous and elitist idea. Nietzsche had little patience for democracy or egalitarianism. He thought that the masses were weak and that true greatness could only come from individuals who were able to rise above the mediocrity of society. This kind of thinking is not only elitist, but also deeply undemocratic. In reality, human progress has come through cooperation, solidarity, and the recognition of our shared humanity. The idea that a select few are destined to dominate the rest of us is an idea that has been used to justify oppression and inequality throughout history. Now, it's important to note that Nietzsche's work is often misinterpreted and misused. For example, his ideas were later co-opted by the Nazis, who distorted his philosophy to justify their racist and authoritarian ideals. Nietzsche himself was vehemently opposed to anti-Semitism and nationalism, and it's clear from his writings that he would have condemned such a use of his ideas. But that doesn't change the fact that Nietzsche's philosophy, with its emphasis on power and hierarchy, can be dangerously open to misinterpretation. The line between embracing strength and embracing cruelty is a fine one. Ultimately, what Nietzsche got wrong was his belief in the supremacy of the individual at the expense of the collective. His ideal of the Übermensch, the relentless pursuit of power, and his disregard for the importance of social cohesion and empathy all point to a vision of humanity that is deeply individualistic and at times even destructive. While Nietzsche rightly challenged the conventional moral order, his solutions to the problems he identified were incomplete and flawed. In contrast, a more evolved philosophy would recognize the importance of both individual autonomy and social responsibility. It would emphasize not just the will to power, but the will to compassion. It would recognize that human beings are not isolated creatures, but social animals, whose strength lies not in domination, but in cooperation and mutual support. Nietzsche's legacy is complex. His ideas were revolutionary, and in many ways they opened up new paths for modern thought. But we must also recognize that the world he envisioned, where individuals are left to fend for themselves in a cruel and indifferent universe, is one that lacks the empathy, connection, and collective responsibility that are essential for human flourishing. So while Nietzsche got many things right, especially in terms of challenging the status quo and questioning traditional moral systems, he also got some things profoundly wrong. His vision of human existence was incomplete, and it's up to us to build on his insights, to move beyond his mistakes, and to create a philosophy that is as much about compassion and community as it is about individual strength and self-overcoming.